With a SAMI spec reamer, you get what you get.
Yeah.
Right? So let's use 30-06 because it's like one of the most universal cartridges. You know, you could shoot you can go lighter than that, but let's just say with 30-06, you got 150s, 165s, 168s, like 178s, you know, 180s, 190s, 200s, you can go the whole way up to 220 in one cartridge. So a lot of guys do not understand what we're talking about here. This stuff's all critical. Say you want to shoot 200s, but your free bore is set up for 150s. So if I'm thinking about this right, that pushes the bullet way down in the case.
Generally.
Right. And if you wanted to shoot reverse, it pulls the bullet way out of the case.
Usually.
Right. So say you're milking 30-06, I'm sure you've made 1,000 of them. How do you decide the free bore just for a SAMI spec 30-06?
Well, SAMI tells me what it is.
Oh, so it tells you whatever that free bore is.
And I might be.
Yeah, I guess I know.
I hate to be. I don't know for sure. I don't think the 30-06 has any free bore. Off the top.
You might be right. It might be zero.
It's again, it's an older, that was designed back prior to 1906, and back then it was very common to it coming out of the transition to just go directly into the lead angle, and it would start out at a much larger diameter. So I don't know, I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it might be 310, it might be 315, and it just has a little long, gentle taper out to the end.
So maybe I should have said 308, because like all federal gold medal 168 grain 308, that's like zero free bore.
Well, as you're thinking of it from the cartridge perspective.
I'm talking about the ammunition, right?
From the ammunition perspective. From the 308 has 90, I believe, off the top of my head.
90 thou free bore, that's what the spec is?
I think so.
So wait, let me interrupt just for a second so I'm clear. So if you're shooting, if it's a SAMI spec reamer and has 90 and you're shooting 168 federal gold medal factory ammo, the average factory ammo, it's jumping 90?
No. I don't know exactly what it's jumping. Free bore is a physical dimension inside the chamber.
Yes.
Okay. Jump is what you're talking about.
Yes, okay.
Okay. And the jump, it might be 90, it might be more than 90.
Oh, okay.
Even though, okay, so your free bore, can I draw on the back of this?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. This might take me a minute, and forgive my drawing skills. We'll call that our free bore here, our lead angle. And let's say we'll do the example of your short bullet first here. So here I've got my neck, my transition, this little section right here. This is my free bore. This is my lead angle. Now, there's length here because your cartridge brass stops back here.
Yes.
Right? There is, and it has to. You don't want the end of your case mouth to run into this transition.
Wait, I hate to interrupt. Please allow me. So, have you had this experience? I had a guy call me, a gun that I knew shot one hole. He had it a little wise. This is good information. And suddenly it wasn't shooting at all. And I don't even know why I said it. Something he said to me, I said, go trim your brass back 10 thou. He called me right back. He said it went right back to one hole.
Yeah.
So your brass cannot hit into the end of the chamber.
No, you're forming a little collet that's creating a lot of, that's squeezing your bullet.
Constriction, right.
Constriction, which is going to create tremendous pressure.
That was worth the video right there, guys.
There you go. So with your little short bullet, your brass is, you've got 10 to 20 thou between here and where that transition starts. Your transition's another 15. So you got 25 thou from your case mouth to the beginning of your throat here.
Yes, okay.
Right? And let's say we got our little short bullet, and again, forgive all my thing, where the ogive starts right at the case mouth. So it's like right here, like a little round nose
yes,
bullet. Yes,
like a 308 168.
Right?
Yes.
And so you've got, and let's say we got 200 thousandths here. And it's actually going to touch out here in the land somewhere, and this is going to be another, let's call that another 30. Well, we've got 25 here, we got 200 there, and we got 30 there. That poor bullet's jumping
Yep.
255 thou.
255 thou before it actually touches the lands
Oh,
out here, okay? Now, we got our longer, heavier, big fat bullet, maybe not fat, but a much longer bullet. It's going to come out, and it again, depending on its ogive shape, okay? The ogive might start back here and come down, or it might start up here and start coming down, right? My drawing's terrible. It's gonna touch up here somewhere near the major diameter of the bullet. So in this case, a 308, somewhere, let's say between almost exactly 308 down to probably 3055. That's where, and again, I'm talking about touching, not into, not anything, just kissing it, okay? Depending on the curvature of your bullet, it's going to touch somewhere in this diameter range, okay? And so that diameter range, again, is determined, where that is on the lead is determined, this is a taper, right? So the farther forward you go, the skinnier it gets. 308 is going to be generally speaking, your freebore diameter is going to be somewhere between 308.5 and maybe 308.5. 308, standard 308 is 310, okay? And then your bullet's 308. It's going to travel some distance or be able to extend some distance into the sleet angle before it touches. And it's going to touch somewhere in this diameter range.
Yes.
Okay?
So
out here somewhere is where that bullet's going to touch. Where your ogive stops, it might stop, we'll just make a little dotted line here. It might stop way back here behind the lead. It might stop out here somewhere in the lead. And where the bearing surface stops and the ogive starts is what I'm talking about. That's the curvature. All bullets, every different brand, every different style of bullet has slightly different differences
shape
in that area.
Yeah, like Matchkings, they're like a football. VLDs are like a javelin.
Correct.
Right. And you said something there and you caught yourself instantly, and even I do that sometimes. You said big fat bullet. And what's interesting is obviously if it's 30 caliber, they're all 308 within a couple 10,000ths either way. But lay people, that less experienced guys don't understand that 150 caliber 30 bullet is 308 and a 220 grain 30 caliber bullet is 308. What we're so concerned with is length, because as they get heavier, it's obviously all the same diameter, so they have to be longer. And by the time you get up to a 245 grain Berger EOL, you got to realize that bullet's probably 1.5 inches long. The bullets are huge, and that's why that is so important to get it right. To get it right, because there's no way on earth, I mean, like he said, you could build a 300 normal mag, I guess you could, to shoot 150s. If you wanted to, you could, or 168s or something like that. But that reamer that reamer chamber is not going to work with a 245.
Maybe. Or you're just seating that 245 a lot deeper.
Right, like maybe like that deep
Well,
into the case.
All of that bearing surface and all of that boat tail is going to be
Pushed
below
into
the
the
neck,
case, yes.
the neck or below.
Which takes up a ton of case capacity.
Yes.
See, that's the thing. And like we said, potentially if the bullet crosses that shoulder neck junction, you've given up accuracy. Again, all the short range guys swear by that.
Yeah, that's
But they also
fair.
shoot a lot of flat base bullets and stuff.
The caveat, again, which wouldn't apply to what you do here, is your magazine length.
Right.
Right? Every rifle has a maximum that's going to fit in it. And if the action you chose, let's say, only allows for a 3.2 inch cartridge overall length, that's going to feed up out of that magazine, not bind up, and you want to use that big, long, heavy bullet, tough
Right.
luck, buddy.
Exactly.
You're seating that bullet in.
Right.
There's nothing any of us can do about it.
And this has been a huge point for us. You know, we have all these sticking points in our business that it's hard for guys to cross over. So we probably build 80% single shots. Bat, solid bottom, single shots. And the reason is because I'm so dogmatic about having these cartridges set up what I call properly. It's so important to me to have the cartridge set up properly. I don't care what Sammy Spec says. That's totally irrelevant to me. But that, exactly what Ray said, it forces you, it doesn't force you, but if you're gonna have a cartridge, like for instance, you know, that's one of the reasons why I write this down. This cartridge on this 300 normal mag is 3.74 long, right? So 3680 is a normal Remington 700 box. So it's not going in there. Now, there might be some detachable box magazines that would fit in, but I don't keep up on all that stuff because I'm so dogmatic. I'm just like, heck with it, build it in a single shot. Because real shooters anyways are gonna shoot one shot. So, you know, and I know people are going crazy when I say that kind of stuff. Now, let's do one more thing on this video that's very important, because every gun I build says, I wish I had brought a gun up, says, just go to our website. On the side of the barrel, it will say the neck diameter. And so we go back to this, let's use this 300 PRC. Where was that? Did we have the 300 PRC reamer?
We got the reamer,
print
but
out?
this
Yeah,
is the different print.
Okay, well, let's just use that print then. So here is the actual 300 Norma reamer that Manson made, and this is the information. So I write what bullet it's set up for, cartridge overall length. Ray asked me this. That's my comparator. So I have a comparator that kind of shows me where the ogive is. I put all this information. That's the actual invoice number. So I'm keeping track of all this stuff. But here, 341 neck. So let's explain different neck. And like I said, with my 7 mag, I mean, I've had like 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 6 different neck diameters just in 7 mag. So I'll just tell you how I do it first when I send you my dummies. You know, I made up these dummies. So I will measure them and see what the loaded cartridge neck diameter is. And then I will subtract, depending on the person, depending on what we're trying to do, I'll subtract like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. That means that these are turn necks. You have to turn the brass to be able to get it to go in the chamber. And my whole idea of that is to get very uniform necks. Because even with the best brass you've ever had, if your neck turning tool is micro adjustable and say you can move in increments less than 1,000, you will see that as the brass comes around to the cutter, it just starts to tick it. So it's ticking it, it's ticking it, it's ticking it. As you move the cutter in, it'll start to clean up 25% of the brass, 30%. Many times what I call skim turn is 50% cleanup. So you will, on the actual neck, you will have half of it, literally half, like from the 3 to the 9 o'clock position, it will be turned. And the other part will not be turned. And then I figure out my clearance, because this is very important. You don't ever, unless you're super knowledgeable, experienced bench rest guy, you don't ever, and I'm sure you're gonna maybe even say greater than this, ever want to run less than 1 total thou clearance from loaded cartridge to the actual dimension in the chamber. So, and most guys run way more than that. But again, if you're trying to put all the bullets through the same hole, which I am, that's my process. That's my process. And of course, sometimes I'll have 100% cleanup, and then maybe 2 thou clearance, or 100% cleanup 3. The one thing that's good about it is if you're turning necks, you, the shooter, gets to determine how much clearance you want. But I also, every time that I send it to him, you probably recall this, I'll say we request. We don't say we demand, we say we request this neck diameter. And the reason is because we're deferring to their experience, which is far greater. And like I said, I never made a reamer, but we'll request a certain neck diameter. Now, they would come back and say, sorry, that's too tight. You know what I mean? And we'd be like, well, then probably we won't. Or you have to turn the necks more. Okay, so, I mean, this kind of gets involved because you have no turn, you have turn, but then there's this kind of in-between turn and no turn, which allows you to, you can never make it grow. But you can remove a little bit, remove a little bit more, remove a little bit more. So kind of talk, if you have anything to say, kind of talk about neck diameters in reamers. Like,
so when you're turning necks, you can get away with the real tight neck clearance.
right.
If you are not turning necks, you're hurting yourself trying to go tight. Because, as Scott was just explaining, one side of that, of even the very best brass,
Yes.
is going to be, give or take, a thou thicker than the thinner side on the opposite side.
So wait. So there's inconsistency even in, at least in my experience, the best brass I've ever seen.
Yeah, virtually everything.
You agree?
Yes.
Yes.
And it can be even worse than that. That's automatically, if you're holding, so if we went with your 1 thou example of clearance, that's a 1/2 thou on either side.
Yes.
Well, now, I've only got a 1/2 thou of movement in here, but my bullet's also being held off because one side of my brass is thicker than the other.
Pushing it over.
It's pushing it over, it's pushing it to one side, it's pushing it to the top, it's doing something else. So if I'm not turning my brass, I tell everybody that they should have at minimum 4 thou of clearance. And depending on the cartridge diameter, maybe even more.
So he's talking about 2 on a side now.
Two on a side, 3 on a side. Most of my competition guns are 6 to 8 thou over loaded neck diameter.
But you're not turning brass.
I'm not turning the brass.
He's using factory brass.
I'm not turning brass. And that's a 308. Yeah, on a 223, it's probably a little less. Okay. So again, there's a bit of proportionality there.
Yes. So this is really hard to less experienced shooters to get that stuff across because like you're saying, it's thicker on one side than the other. So you want the bullet to enter into the lead and into the rifling absolutely dead center, because that's why you spend hours over here getting everything perfectly concentric. So if the brass is not turned, and say it's bad brass, I mean, I've seen brass that was 2 thou thicker on one side or 3.
Sure.
So what it's doing is, look at this pencil. It's taking your bullet and it's shoving it over like that. So the bullet, instead of the bullet going into the hole like this, the bullet is going into the hole like this. Essentially, that's super exaggerated, and it does nothing good for accuracy. So again, I'm always running everything really tight because I want the most accuracy that I can possibly get. And what Ray's saying is, if you're not going to turn brass, he wants even a little more than what I would normally do, because you're building the tolerance then into the chamber.
You're allowing the bullet to center. You're giving room to allow the bullet to center itself. Otherwise, the cartridge is holding that bullet off center.
Yes.
Okay? And so if you don't give it a little bit of room.
Right. And I was actually shocked that he said, you say up to 8 thou, 4 on a side.
Yeah.
See, I've never, in my whole life, I've never run that big.
I'm an infrequent annealer on my brass. I haven't split a brass neck in probably going on 25 years. And I'll reload it's 308 primarily. They'll get 10, 12 reloads before, the primer pockets start getting
Lapua brass.
Lapua brass.
Yes. Yeah. So this is something else, because a lot of guys, less experienced shooters, don't understand why you want to spend considerably more money for really high quality brass. And it's not just that the primer pockets stay tight. It is uniformity. Uniformity is the whole point of higher quality brass, which leads to accuracy.
Yes. And from the standpoint of a competitive shooter, it's the amount of time you have to spend in the reloading room. Wow. Okay. If I was doing all the things you're doing,
You'd be there forever.
I'd be there forever, and I would hate my life. I would hate shooting. I'd be taking up, fishing or something else.
Yes, golf.
Right? But if so starting out with good brass, I don't have to do any of that stuff, and it shoots great. I may not be getting quarter-minute groups, but for me to be successful in my chosen sport, the 10 ring at 1,000 yards is 20 inches, 2 minutes, right? If I'm loading ammo that's 3/4 of a minute grouping for 20 shots, which is good.
Yes.
I mean, that's not a small feat.
Right. Exactly.
For 20 shots.
Yes.
I'm going to win virtually every time I lay down.
Yep.
I don't need to shoot a quarter minute to do that. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that I don't try to shoot. I don't say that I
Right. You want as
skip out.
much as you can get for the least you can put into it.
Yes.
Right.
There's trade-offs there.
Yes.
Right. And so it's just a different approach or a different. There's just different trade-offs that I've chosen to be successful at what I do.
Right, and we talked earlier, just tell them what you told me. Because like PRS, people think now, and I'm not going to beat up on PRS, but they think, oh yeah, you got to, what do you need to win at PRS?
Well, and I've never shot PRS. And let me preface what he said. I really don't like guys who, they're one sport and they get down another sport. All shooting, choose your favorite shooting and go out and have fun doing it.
I agree with that, definitely.
Right? And so every sport, if you boil it all the way down, you're talking about sight alignment and trigger control. And all of the other stuff that goes with it are just the particular skills you have to develop to beat the rules of that sport.
Yes.
Okay. So PRS has their rules where they're shooting. I don't know. I think they're typically 2-minute plates, and they're doing it in a short amount of time, and probably, and as I understand it, moving different positions as they're doing it.
Yes.
So there's a lot of skill that has to be built up to accomplish that and be at the high end of that.
But you don't need a one-hole gun.
You don't need a one-hole gun.
Right.
Is the point he was trying to get to, and
yes.
I was long-winded about.
Right. No, it was great. That was actually great. And so you also said something else there that people will skip over. See, it's very difficult to explain this to almost non-professional shooters. All of this stuff is exponential. If you knew, Vicki will tell you, I will sit in the basement pretty much like a dang monk down there to load 50 shells. Sometimes I'm there 3 days.
I don't doubt it.
To load 50 shells. I mean, to start with brand new brass and do every single high-level bench rest operation to them, to get them all as uniform as possible. To do, and this was crazy, I can't believe that you told me you weighed primers. I thought like I'm the only crazy man that ever weighed primers.
While I was captain of the FTR team, I played around with it a little bit.
Captain of a lot of guys don't know what FTR is. So that's 308, 223, right?
308, 223, off a bipod. The rifle can weigh 8.25 kilograms, off a bipod, rear bag, and you shoot it prone. And you're shooting it typically, you're either shooting a Palma, which is 800, 900, and 1,000 yards, 15 shots each, or you'll be shooting 20 shots at 1,000 yards. There's some short range ones, but they're not as commonly shot, at least not in the bigger events.
So it's not open F. It's a little more restriction.
FTR is more restricted.
Right.
F open, they're shooting off a bench rest, a rear bag.
No, not a bench rest, a pedestal or a SEB.
Yeah, well, not off a bench,
right.
but the
that's
bench
what they'll
rest.
think. They'll think you said bench
rest.
Right,
the rest.
Right, exactly.
The rear bag, a heavier rifle, 10 kilograms, any caliber they want. I believe it's up to 30 cal, and any cartridge, any caliber, whatever they want to take the punishment of for the 20 shots at a time. F class.
So he was the captain of the U.S. team.
Yeah,
right?
that was the That was the highest level team I've been captain of.
Okay.
I've actually been captain of a number of second tier teams over the years, or a coach on dozens and dozens of teams over the years.
In other words, a lot of high level shooting.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So I don't weigh primers.
But you did. You told me you did.
But I did play around with it a little bit, and I'm curious what you found from it. I went through, I weighed, I don't know, probably about 1,000 primers and sorted them out into about
Here we go.
2/10 grain increments, probably.
How many groups? Have you took 1,000? By the way, we both own a Sartorius. He's the only other man that I know. He was in my reloading room. He's like, oh yeah, I have one of them too. Well, I'm in with the wrong guys because none of my guys have Sartorius scales, but Sartorius scales can weigh a hair off your face, essentially, right?
Oh yeah, or less.
Right, it's amazing. So I've done the same thing. For 1,000-yard competition, I've weighed primers. But my experience was if you start with 1,000, you're going to end up with like 10 piles. 10 piles. And my whole point was simply to put all the uniform ones, all the ones that weighed the same with the ones that weighed the same. Now, here's the thing. I couldn't tell the difference.
So what you have when you're weighing a primer is you got a cup, you got an anvil, you got some foil that gets burned up, and you got your priming compound. Okay?
Yes.
And
We should stop and tell Vicky, we should tell the audience that Vicky actually has made primers.
oh yeah.
So she worked for CCI.
Okay. So what I did, the method I used was, I started out and weighed and I numbered about 20 primers. Okay, so before they were fired, obviously, right? And then I deprimed them carefully and kept, they had a little number written on each one of them
Wait a minute, you took them apart?
after I fired them.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Because I know what you're going. Go ahead.
Okay.
Very
And so
interesting.
now I found my weight range, for my cup, my weight range, for my anvil, and I could subtract those two out and get the weight, what the weight was for the pellet.
Yes.
Okay, whatever it was. What I found was the cups and the anvils were actually fairly uniform.
Yes.
Close. They're close.
Did you know this? They're cut out of a sheet.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. They were fairly uniform, but there was, and it's been a long time since I did this, but there was a, let's call it, gosh, I can't even remember. There was a variation on each of these. Right, so you had heavy cups and you had light cups, and you had heavy anvils and you had light anvils, and so now when you go and you weigh out your 1,000 of them, you have this big distribution.
Yes.
Oops, broke my pencil. Okay. Well, the problem is you have no idea what your cup weighs.
Yep,
You have no idea what your anvil weighs, and you have no idea what this weighs after you shoot it.
Yep.
Right? So what I did, and where you'll actually find a tiny bit of SD difference, is I keep breaking my pencil. I took the heaviest, because that would be the heaviest anvils, the heaviest cups, and the heaviest pellet, and I took the lightest, the lightest of each one of those. That to me was the best I could do to have an equal amount of priming compound.
Yes.
In here, I could have a heavy cup and a heavy anvil
And a light.
light compound,
Yep.
or any combination. And so in this big zone where everything is, you're at the luck of the draw.
Exactly.
Out here where you got 50 primers out of 1,000, you're going to see your SD drop about, it was like 1.7 or something SD. So it was a lot of work. I did it because I thought, well, I'm going to do it, and if there's competitive advantage there for the American team, then we're going to do it.
Yes.
But for a thou and a half, or a 1.5
Yeah, 2 feet per
SV
second. Yeah.
difference, it just wasn't worth doing. Now, other people might be able to do this in a more scientific way, but that's the way I did it.
Well, like I said, I put them all into groups, and I shot the groups together. And
but see, you're pulling them out of here.
well, yes, exactly.
Right. I mean, these ones could all weigh the same, and the ones with the light anvils and the heavy that would weigh the same.
You don't know what the variable
You don't know which
was.
one's which.
Exactly. So, but here's a new rule: unless you're weighing primers, don't call me because you're not one of our customers. So, yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much stuff. We could stand here literally for hours. I have all these reamers. I was thinking about going through them, but it is now 3 o'clock. Ray, you tell me, do you want to continue on for a whole nother video, or do you think that, is there anything, because they really hear about reamers. Is there anything?
Well, you want to talk about the patch method, so let's do that. And we can,
the patch
call it
method.
a day.
So let me interject here for a second. So out of all the reamers that I ever got off of Manson Reamer, I never had problems with any of them. None. Never problems. One day I was chambering a barrel, and I believe it was a new reamer, brand new. I had never used it before. Was it 6GT?
I don't remember which.
It was some cartridge that was.
I think it was like a 6.5 by 47.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But anyways, we told you that as the reamer enters into the rifling in there, you get this, remember we showed you this. What you literally get is you get this motion like this, like it's going in, right?
Yep.
That's normal. And you go into that, like to cut that away, and then it just goes really almost dead. There's no vibration. If you're doing it right and everything's set up right, it just transitions and now it's very smooth. Well, this one didn't. And it's a shame. I have these photos on my phone. Maybe we'll get them off and Vicki will put them in here. It started to chatter. And so I immediately changed my speed. I changed how I was feeding it in. I did everything that I know to do to stop it from doing that. And when I pulled the reamer back out, the inside of the chamber was ugly. Do you remember? I sent you the photos. Yeah. There's literally like grooves cut in the chamber. And of course, I'm hyperventilating here. I mean, I'm going to ruin a customer's barrel. It was a bad deal. It's a bad time. And so I immediately called them up. This is another great thing. They answered the phone right away. And they called you at home or something, didn't they?
Yeah, I was driving home when we were talking.
I called.
Oh, Vicki called. Well, anyways, then the next thing, right, emergency, right? And he called me, you called me. And that was like the first time I ever actually talked to you, because we do everything in writing. And he said, do you know what the patch method is? I'm like, nope, I have no clue. And so go ahead.
So there are.
I hate to do this. I'm gonna stop.
Why do we have to stop? Wait.
Just hold a second. We'll just come right back in. Action.
Okay. Well, we apologize for that. The batteries in GoPro only go, what do you think they go, Vicki? 30, 40 minutes, and then it gets real hot. And so Vicki had to switch out the battery. We are still using our GoPro, by the way. Yes, I showed in a previous video, we got the new big camera. We now have the computer. We have the circuit interrupter. We got a new desk. Ray helped us move. Turn around and show them. Helped us show them how dedicated we are. We literally now do not have a couch. So we're going to live in a house. We don't even have a couch. And we live pretty minimalistic as it is. But Ray helped us get the couch out. And then we got this big, massive desk we had to take the legs off of. And Ray helped us carry that in and get it all set up. So we have a giant desk, and we're going to put all the computer stuff on this big desk, and probably not these videos, but maybe the next ones, Vicki will be editing on like DaVinci Resolve with an actual computer that has more power than a plastic fan or something like that. That thing's not too quick. So anyways, we were talking about the patch method and how Ray helped me. I had Vicki's going to put the photos in. How I had a horrible chamber and I was having all kind of problems. I couldn't solve it. And he called me on the phone from home or from driving and said, This is the patch method. This is what you do. And so go ahead and tell them what you told me.
So the patch method is just a way of dampening the reamer. And then there's a variety of it. I think the original was like wax paper. You remember the old wax guys would dip tooling in the machine shops.
No, actually,
Well, anyway,
I don't go that far.
guys would do that as well. If you're a old timer, that they dip it in kind of a waxy substance.
Dip
But
the
anyway,
actual reamer in it?
Oh yeah.
Really? Cool.
When they were going to chamber?
When they were trying to get rid of chatter.
Okay.
So the patch method is just a way to help stabilize the reamer so that you can cut the chatter out and then get back into cutting. So whenever you're chambering, if you discover it's chattering, the first and only thing you have to do is to get the chatter out. It's not going to stop by itself. I talk to guys all the time who they get a little chatter and they just keep trying and trying and trying until they got the chamber all the way to depth, and they never did anything to really get rid of it. They just thought it would go away. So they'll
then you're SCREW'd.
Yeah, because
you ruined the barrel.
Potentially.
Yes.
If you don't have enough shank on that barrel to cut off and redo it, then yeah, you're done. So if you ever do get chatter, it's not the most common thing. Guys really, have a lot of anxiety about it, but it does happen. They're machine tools. So anyway, what I do is I'll take a patch, it's just a cleaning patch. It doesn't have to be super big. This is, I think, probably 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, something like that. Could be a 2-inch patch, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to poke a hole in the center, roughly in the center of it, and I'm going to drape it over the reamer, and I'm going to pull that back, and I got to work it on there a little bit. And usually it'll depend kind of how far into the chamber I am. So maybe I can just show you on here. If I don't have much of the body into the chamber, so let's say the barrel ends right here or something, or I'm like in the shoulder. The shoulder, a lot of times when you start cutting in the shoulder, a lot of times that's where you'll have the chatter will show up, or it'll start chattering. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this back, and I'm going to try to kind of drape it over the neck.
Yes.
So I got my transition shoulder there, the little 45, if you can see that. I'm just going to bring this up back, and then when we run it back into the chamber, it's going to kind of form around the neck for me. And I kind of pulled it past, but anyway, it's going to form around the neck, and this patch is going to go down into the flutes. You're going to oil it up, and
I was running oil, so it immediately soaked the whole thing and formed right around it.
Okay, and I think what I told you to do was to turn the oil off while you were doing this.
No, I didn't. I ran it.
Okay. He should have turned the oil.
I don't know if he told me. I'm very deaf. He's told me a ton of things in the last 3 days. I heard 10%.
Okay. So anyway, when it goes in, it's just going to drape around it. You're going to go in. You're going to take a real light cut. You don't want to do a lot because this is in the way of your chips, right? But what it's doing is it's stabilizing the reamer. So as the barrel is spinning around it, it's stabilizing it, dampening it, in an attempt for the reamer to just cut cleanly, so that it cuts the ridges off of the chatter that's in the chamber. Now, sometimes you might have to do this. You're just going to go in. You're just going to kiss it. You'll feel it, and come right back out. So you might only infeed like 5 thou when it starts to cut, and you bring it back out. Take your patch off, put a new patch on, clean everything off, do it again. And once you get it cleaned up, you might go in again, and it may cut fine, or it might start chattering again. Put the patch back on, do it again. One of the things you mentioned when you're first entering the chamber, it's hitting the lands. You've got, inside the chamber, you've got your lands. So here's your foregroove. It's like just like that, believe it or not. Here's your groove. And this is an oval bore for the oval bullets. But anyway, as the reamer tooth is coming around, right? So here's the face of the tooth, and here's your relief. And let me get a little more pencil there. It hits this, right? This has nothing to do with chatter. It's just it's an interrupted cut. It comes through and bang, bang, bang until you get past it. And you say to force through that, right?
Yes.
Well, one of the things you can do when you get chatter,
tell them that the actual chamber then, it literally looks just like that.
Well, when you have chatter in the chamber, you can have some different looks, but usually it looks like it's splined.
Yes.
Like a spline.
Yes, exactly like a tractor spline that goes on the back of a three-point hitch.
It can be really, really fine.
No.
Or it can be really, really coarse. And it just depends on the nature of what's going on. The patch stabilizes it. So if you get it cleaned out, go back in, it starts shattering again, and get it cleaned out, go back in, it starts shattering again. What you might want to do is the same thing Scott does when he first goes in and gets rid of the lands at first. That after you get it out again, punch it hard. Turn your speed up or leave your speed the same, but feed it about twice as hard for about 50 or 75 thousandths. And then back it out. I found that works pretty well. Sometimes what will happen is you get that chatter in there, it's just because you've been playing around, maybe not playing, but you've been lightly cutting, trying to get it out. You've done some work hardening in there, and you got to punch through that to get the reamer back in there and settle down. If the chamber...
So wait, stop and explain work hardening for a second, because people will not realize with certain things, if something work hardens, it can get, in other applications, it can get so hard, like you can't cut it almost.
Yeah, or it's not uniformly hard all the way around.
Yeah.
Okay, and so that's causing your reamer trouble as that barrel's spinning around. It's got a little hard spot that's bump, 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 right? You got to punch, you got to get through that and get it out of the way. If I was farther in, and I had my body, a good, a half inch of my body, a quarter inch of the body inside the chamber, inside the barrel, I'd bring the patch back a little farther. And I would get it back here around this. The patch is just trying to stabilize the reamer. So I'm getting it back, if I'm stabilizing it up here and my problem's back here, that's not doing me any good, right? I want to get that patch back where it's going to stabilize it. And again, if the patch isn't working, you can wrap it with wax paper. Basically I cut like a strip of maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches of wax paper, and I'll wrap it around like the neck and the front part of the body area. And again, it's just a way for it to kind of stabilize and dampen the reamer as it goes in. I've used paper towels, not these work towels, but just regular paper towels. The one thing you have to watch out for when you're doing this is if you use, let's say paper towels, for example, if you get a big wad of material on one side, what's going to happen is you're going to go in and it's going to hold the reamer to the other side, and you're going to gouge, you're going to open up your chamber. You don't want to do that. You want this patch to be fairly symmetrical around the reamer. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll go in, with the oil, it'll form around this reamer a lot better. I'll go in almost to the point where it's not touching, almost to the point where it's cutting, but not quite yet. I'll bring it back out and just double check and make sure that patch looks like it's on there, equally all the way around. So it's not pushing the reamer off to one side. And that, 60% of the time will solve your problem. The feeds and speeds sometimes will solve your problem. Sometimes Dave said, sometimes changing the pilot will solve your problem.
I tried that before I called you.
Yeah, and there's not a single thing that causes it. A lot of times, so I get, of all the reamers we sell every month, I'll get, 1 to 3 back.
And I've only ever had one happen. It's only ever happened to me once.
Yeah, so I'm like the most demoralized chambering guy in the world because pretty much every chamber I use has a problem with it. Because the customer's had some sort of an issue with it. So I get to practice with that quite a bit. A lot of those reamers I get back, maybe a half of them, they don't chatter for me at all.
Yeah, which is weird.
Well, it's not really weird because it's not always the reamer that's causing it. Your lathe, your setup, your power supply, all has an effect on that. Your gear train,
there's harmonics going
your
on.
gear train will have an effect on that. So you've got 3-phase power.
Yes.
Okay, that's a much smoother power
Delivery, right.
than single phase. Single phase has a built-in harmonic.
Yes.
Where you've got a bigger chuck on it, that's going to help you.
Yes.
A smaller chuck has a lot less rotational.
By the way, let's stop and mention that. So if you're out there and you're going to buy a lathe, you don't want a lathe that weighs 500 pounds or 1,500. This lathe weighs like over 3,000 pounds. And so the heavier it gets, the harmonics that he's talking about are minimized. I would
It's more solid, yes. Yes, that's correct. For example, on the lathe I have at work, it has a speed that's 33 RPM. Virtually every reamer I use, good, bad, or ugly, I can make that reamer chatter if I put that lathe on 33 RPM. There is something in the gear train.
Oh, interesting.
That just will cause that thing to start.
In other words, the way
chattering.
the gears are meshing together or something.
And it might be I just never use it. They're dirty. Who knows? I've never bothered to worry about it because you've got a lot of speeds. A lot of lathes, the low speed is 70.
Which is pretty fast, by the way.
Which is pretty fast. It's nice because I can go down to 24 or 45, skipping the 33. And that lets me play with my feeds and speeds in a way that where a lot of guys with the more, they're not industrial lathes, they're hobby lathes.
Right.
Okay.
In other words, benchtop lathes. You're probably, this is just a really general statement, if you have a benchtop lathe, you're probably not going to build guns that shoot one hole. You might, but...
you might, and there's I don't think there's any reason they couldn't. But there's a lot of work that would go into that, making sure everything is leveled.
Yes.
Everything's aligned. Your setup is solid. The barrel is dialed in perfectly. Right. All of those.
By the way, that was one of the first things he asked me, which I took that as an offense. He said, "Are you dialed in?" You guys have no idea. I'll stand here 8 hours sometimes. I'll be so dialed in. I'm like Speedy. He'll be like, well, guys will say I went to 2 10,000s, and he's like, well, why didn't you just go on to perfect? In other words, when the needle no longer moves at all, that's perfect. But that's also part of how that you get guns to shoot one hole.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Yeah. Getting down to 0 0 0.
You've got it. If you're not dialed in, right, you're
inducing that, right?
You're inducing something.
Yes.
You're inducing something.
Yes. Let me, just for a second, let me interrupt. So he called me and he told me to use the patch method. So I'd never done it. So I want to tell you what my experience was. It looked horrible in there. And I was only in there maybe that far because I had tried everything that I could think of and changing pilots, speeds, everything. I couldn't get it to stop. And I was literally panicked. And so he said, try the patch method. I actually used bigger patches. I used 2 or 3. And I put the patch on, it was soaked with oil, I ran it in there, and I could immediately tell that it was a little less. And I only went, like he said, a little way. I took it out, there was chips on it, I put a new patch on. It was soaked with oil, I went in, and every time, I probably did that, no joke, probably about 15 times. I kept changing patches, and it got better and better and better. Now what's interesting about this is, when it finally stopped, that you can no longer feel it, there you could still see, and you gotta understand what we're talking about here, like you know, like when he's telling you, look at this face, look at that face, it's things that you can't even see with your eye. Like you have to have cheaters on to see these little facets on the, but in the chamber, I could still see very small lines that were still there, even when I was done, because eventually you can only go so deep and you've exceeded your headspace, right? The interesting thing about that is that gun, it was a 6GT. I'm almost certain.
It was. I just remember.
It shot, was one of the best guns I've ever built. It shot phenomenal. So it did not impact the shooting ability at all. But if you want to know the kind of guy I am, I was so hyped up that I sent him the reamer back. Now, for all I know, he's built 100 guns with that exact same reamer, but I was afraid of that reamer now because I didn't ever want to go through that experience again. And so he sent me another brand new 6GT reamer, and we built another gun with that new one. And if anything, it shot even better. I mean, that 6GT really hammers, by the way. So it's just what he told me worked, and he saved, like, I don't know, that was a very expensive barrel because people don't know this, but you know. When you go over diameter, you go over length, you request certain things, the price of barrels goes up exponentially. And you really, I almost hate to jinx myself, I've never lost a barrel. I've never lost a barrel in my whole career, and we're about at 300 barrels. But it can be highly stressful at times.
Sure.
Because things happen. Like in the process, I've had tools break. I never had a reamer break. But I've had things break, and it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to get this fixed? You know what I mean? But you're always trying to get it fixed. So I'm thinking about wrapping this up. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, that's good.
So, okay. So, Ray, really, really seriously, I'm so glad that you came. I'm very appreciative of Manson, you know, having you come here. And Dave, if you're out there, we miss you. We really do. I mean, I had a great relationship with Dave, and happy retirement, I guess. Guys, if you're going to buy reamers, there's much other companies. You can do whatever you want to do. I only buy Manson reamers, and we have only bought Manson reamers for years and years now. And except for this one instance we're talking about, I have never had a problem. And they almost, I don't think 100%, as far as that freebore and stuff, you almost always get it almost perfect. That's probably, of all the things we've talked about, to me, that's the most important thing, because I want it to be like my dummy rounds.
Sure.
And it almost always is. And that is, if you guys don't really understand what we're talking about, it's a big deal.
Sure.
It really is a big deal to get the actual chamber to the dimensions that you actually wanted. And again, I'm probably biased about this, but I really believe that relationship between the cartridge, the bullet, and the chamber is super critical if you want to go, say, under half-minute groups. I truly believe that, because what I'm trying to say is I give a lot of credit to the accuracy that we repeatedly get to the reamers. I really do. And of course, you know, it's not just that. It's the barrel. I mean, you have to have great barrels. It's the barrels we use, the receivers we use, the scopes we use. It has to be all top of the line stuff to get those little bug hole groups, especially if it's a 300 Norma mag shooting 245 grain bullets. So anyways, once again, I really, really appreciate you having you here. You taught me a ton of stuff, and it's just been great. We could do probably, I bet we could do 10 videos.
Probably.
But he has to catch a plane, and so we have to get him back on the road. All right, guys, see ya.